too much trouble.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ethics. I'm Connor Bromley. I'm joined by an AltEnding who's a little bit under the weather. I don't know what would the fitness report say.
Fitness is not in my vocabulary.
No.
I don't even run on the toilet.
Oh, Christ. What a way to start. What a way to start. Anyway, we're here to talk about Sunderland's 0-0 draw with Brighton at the MX Stadium. Our first league visit there. We haven't played them since 2005 in the league. We have played them in the League Cup and got beat. I don't know how long ago that was, 15 years ago or something like that. So, yeah, our first visit there. And I think to me, it was probably a fair result. I thought Sunderland were the better team for an hour. I think if anyone was going to win it towards the end, it was probably going to be Brighton. But, yeah, what's your initial assessment before we dive into it properly? What was, was it a fair result? Do you think Sunderland maybe deserved more, deserved less?
Yeah, I think last week we said we'd be happy for a draw there. And before the match, I met some, friends and whatnot, and we were all going to be happy with a point. I was less happy with that immediately the game ended, though. I felt like when the game ended, I felt like, they were so beatable, and we didn't give the best account of ourselves necessarily. But I've had time to reflect on how I felt there, and I actually think we played quite well for periods of the game. I'm now back at where I began, and I think that a point was actually pretty good. Keeps us ticking over. If you get a point away from home and win your home games, then you're good. You're doing great. We're still sixth, which is absurd at Christmas. So yeah. I've had time to reflect.
Yeah, that is very, very true. And I think really that the crux of this episode, I'm going to guess where we're going to go with this conversation, is basically our defensive strength coupled with our attacking, maybe lost my word there. Our attacking, I'm trying to think of a word that I can't.
Impetus.
Lack of attacking ability. Yeah, impetus was the word I was trying to say, but I butchered it twice and I didn't want to go for it a third time. It was a bit like, did you see that Scott Parker video? We could maybe include this on propaganda where he couldn't say cold, hard reality or something. He stumbled four times and then gave up. No, so yeah, I feel like that's an important thing because Sunderland have got the fourth best defensive record, but they've also got one of the weakest attacks in the Premier League as well, and I think that's it's a point worth discussing. How much are we sacrificing our attack for our defense? Is that even the case? Is it the fact that what I actually think is happening is that I think that we are awful decision makers at that final moment. I think that is the thing right now that's killing us as we go into games. It's the fact that when we get into positions to shoot, we're sometimes passing. When we get into positions to pass, we're shooting. I feel like there's a lot of wasteful play happening in the final third. I think Lafay is doing excellently, sort of creating almost the secondary assist, I would probably say. He's getting us in those positions, and often we're just so wasteful. I was saying that Mundle chance where Lafay plays it across and Mundle's running at the end of it. I think a bit more composure there. A player maybe, of 100 Premier League games who's been round the block and has been playing a lot this season probably takes the touch there and maybe gets brought down or gets a better shot on goal. But that was a really big chance for me. But yeah, where do you sit on this debate? And I can see we've got some charts going in there. So
there's lots of charts.
There's a lot of information.
Let's see how the conversation goes, and we'll bring up the appropriate ones. Look, I think you're right, and it wasn't something I'd considered really, but you do talk about it a lot, and I think that we do have a problem that's the wrong word before everybody leaps upon me. We don't make many shots inside the box, and we do have a lot of possession and a lot of control, and definitely in the last couple of weeks, a lot of people I have witnessed at the match, and you can hear it on the telly as well, are all clamouring for a chance to get a shot off. And there's just a reluctance to get any sort of shot off outside the box. And it seems to be, wanting to be as intricate as possible to try to get shots away. And I think that it's difficult. I've got a pass to Brobby stat chart up there, which I think is an interesting place to begin. I've got lots of different things. Let's see how we go in the conversation. So if you go horizontally across the page, this is who that player passes to, which is fine. But I'm interested in the vertical one, which is who these players receive a pass from. And if you look at who Brobby receives a pass from, this is in the Brighton game. And I might try and delve into it over other games and collate the figures, but I bet it's not much different given we don't play very differently. And if you look at who Brobby receives a pass from here, he receives one pass from a midfielder. And I think if your out-and-out lone striker receives a single pass from a midfielder, then I think your striker is going to struggle to score goals. And I think that's quite telling. You look at Lefay, Adingra, Rigg, further down the horizontal list, and there are no passes upfield there. And if you were to cut the diagram in half, there's an awful lot of passes there that are going defensively or defensively sort of contained. And that would be normal. You'd get more there than you would do further up the field, but it's noticeably vacant the more you get to our attacking players on the right. And the chance for those attacking players to then pass the ball, which would be the bottom right. And I do think that speaks to a lack of, sort of connection with our forwards. So that would be something to be concerned about, perhaps.
I think this is interesting looking at this because
Go on, then. Yep.
when I watch Sunderland, my main gripe, I think, and look, this is nitpicking because we're a good team. Like, this isn't a criticism or anything, but I feel like we are sacrificing that little bit of attacking intuition. I think we are maybe stifling a bit of creativity because we want to, when we have the ball, we want to sort of control the game. And I think Bris would hate to see us take shots from 25 yards and for them to sail over it or sacrifice the ball that we've worked so hard to get. But I've just watched Aston Villa beat Manchester United, and Aston Villa continually score goals from range. And look, I get they've got players that can do that, and maybe we don't. But I think we are at the point where we need to see a bit more shooting. We've got players like Xhaka, like Lefay. We've got Mundell, who I think is capable of doing that. I think Adingra is probably capable of scoring long-range goals. I think Isidore is when he plays. We do have players that are capable of doing it, but I feel like it's a directive, really. Don't shoot from outside the box. I've only seen Lefay try it a couple of times. Talby got one against Liverpool, but it was deflected. But they're the things that can happen when you shoot from range, and I'm finding it increasingly more frustrating that, you know, the amount of times we get into good positions, and we get into that final third and we really struggle to think what to do when we get to that point, which is why I always end up
nothing comes of it. Yeah, nothing comes of it.
Yeah, and that's why it comes back to, in my opinion, that I don't think we are good enough at ball carrying in that area of the field. Because again, if you watch the Man United Villa game, and I'm seeing both of those teams, when they get into the final third, are really happy to try and run. You know, I saw Mason Mount do it countless times where he gets the ball, he tries to run forward, he tries to get through past players, and we don't really do that. We're so cautious, and I think that is helping us control games. That's why it feels like these two games against Newcastle and Brighton in particular, and Liverpool, I'll chuck in as well, we have controlled the game. Anyone who's watching that game will have said for large periods Sunderland were in absolute control and were playing really well, which we absolutely are, but we aren't doing anything in the final third because we're sacrificing the attacking, you know, intuition to make sure we're maintaining that control of the game.
And I'm going to make the assumption here that you think that Geertruida had a good game, because I thought he had a great game yesterday.
Yeah, I would say,
agree. Put that chart back up then, because I think that speaks to what you are saying. And this may surprise people, that the person who connects most with the forward players is Geertruida. He's second on that list. And if you scan across his name on that list horizontally, those are the people he passes to. And he passes to Xhaka more than anybody else. Fine, he plays alongside him. But he passes to Adingra more than anybody else. And Rigg, almost more than anybody else. And Brobby. If you combine all of those passes to Diarra, Brobby, Rigg, Adingra, and Xhaka next to him, he is the person who connects to the midfield most. And you go down the list and we talk about Lefay's creativity, way more than Lefay. And so he did have a good game yesterday, but it might be a surprise at just how how much of an impact Geertruida has in making those progressive passes up the field. He's making more of a connection than Lefay was yesterday, although Lefay plays higher up, so he has less opportunity to do that. You have to bear that in mind. But I think that's really important that he is the person that, who connected that much. It's a really good argument to say he's got to stay in that position until after AFCON, for sure. But it'd be interesting to go back and have a look at how much Siddiqui contributes to those forward passes to our advanced players. But I mean, I have no doubt that if we didn't have Geertruida in the midfield yesterday, we would have been an awful lot weaker going forward and had even fewer chances. So you made an interesting point about not progressing the ball, not having the creativity, but I think people would be surprised that the person who did that the most was Geertruida.
Yeah, but I did notice in the game that Adingra had a lot of space on that left side, particularly in the first half, and it did always feel like it was Geertruida that was finding him and playing that ball across. So it surprises me because I would have thought Lefay would have been higher, but then I suppose I think about Lefay's. He did create a lot of chances, but a lot of them came from crosses coming at the box. Obviously, he's the one that put one on Alderete's head, and Alderete, I think, was actually offside, so it probably wouldn't have counted if it had went to VAR, but Alderete probably should do better with it. He heads it. I think the keeper sort of saves it, and I think it goes over the bar. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to this problem is. I do sort of wonder, should we be asking for more in an attacking sense from a player like Granit Xhaka? But I'm seeing him do sweeping balls from left to right. I mean, against Newcastle, how many times did he get the ball in the centre and get the balls over to the wingers? And he does that a lot. But I do think that I don't know if I'm blaming. Oh, blame's a strong word. I don't know if the reason is centrally we aren't getting the ball into the wingers enough, or if the issue is that the wingers are positionally incorrect and can't get into the game. I don't know what that is, but I definitely think, for me, the right wing in particular all season has been a big issue for us in terms of chance creation, and that's what I've boiled it down to when I watch Sunderland. I think the right hand side just hasn't been right all season.
Well, yeah, I'm tempted to agree with you. I think Traore's played well with Lefay behind him, though, and I think against Newcastle he put better balls in than we get from the left. I like Talby, but he's not that productive in creating balls for forwards. He's quite productive in progressing the ball himself, and he's quite good at taking shots on, but he doesn't produce much for others in that sense. So I don't know how fair it is to blame the right wing. But seeing as we're heading there, why don't we talk about our wingers at the weekend? I agree that they often seem quite isolated. Some of that is that they're asked to defend quite deeply, and I agree with you that some of our lack of, for want of a better phrase, XG or creativity is that we are so tough defensively. I think that is a choice. I think that choice is perfectly fine this season, because if you can, I mean, you've got to not concede and you have to take your chances. And that is the definition of what we're doing this season. We don't have many chances, but we take most of them and we don't give anybody else any chances. And if you end up with a 0 goal difference, I think ours is +2 at the minute. But if you end up with a 0 goal difference, you'll finish 9th to 12th. And that would have been beyond all of our expectations. So I think the way that we're playing is perfectly acceptable, but it isn't a long-term way to play. And it would be implausible to imagine that Reduce sees this as the only way we play forevermore. I don't think so. So I think he knows what our difficulty is, but I think he's very focused at the minute on saying, look, let's be here next year. So we can be hopeful. I'm absolutely certain that they see where their issues are and where they need to improve. But let's talk about the wingers, because I think that's an area we agree we can improve on.
Yeah. Just before we do that, I will say, before we get into this in more deeply, we have played 4 very difficult teams back to back. You know, we have played Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, and Brighton, all of which are teams that have aspirations to finish in the top 6 or 7 this season, and possibly will. So while we have been anemic in attack over these last 4 games, or more anemic than we'd like to be, the context is it's against Leeds, who are a weaker team. I'd be very curious to see how that looks for us, and whether or not we go back to maybe how we were against Bournemouth, where we were pretty, felt to me like, anyway, we were pretty creative in that one. And so I think that is worth looking at.
It's such small margins as well. I mean, if Ballard's header goes in, doesn't hit the bar, or if Mundle runs, to be fair to Mundle, he runs onto that ball very well. He strikes it. Hume has a shot, which he hits poorly, but if he hits it right, these are small margins. and they're small misses. One of those goes in, and we're talking about winning a tough game 1-0. So I don't want to give people the impression that we're down on the team. We're not. I think it's really, really amazing where we are.
But this is a massive point. This is a brilliant point.
Absolutely, yeah. But there is a feeling that in watching the way we play that we could do better. And maybe we're just a bit impatient. Maybe this is to come next season. Let's see what the January transfer window brings in the summer. But I do watch Bromley yesterday a lot. I was at the game and he looked thoroughly fed up at points. And I think if you are Brian Bromley, it's pretty miserable to play in that formula. You're not going to get many chances. He has aspirations to be back in the Dutch national team. He's worked really hard. He looks better and better every week, but he's getting such a little ball to work with. And I think he performs miracles in winning balls and holding it up and laying it off. And the support just doesn't come up from the midfield fast enough to make any use of it. He was livid yesterday when Trey Hume took that shot. Just an inside pass to the channel. Bromley would easily hold off the player and get a shot away. And I just think the chances are so few and far between. He must be deeply frustrated. And he applauded the crowd yesterday at the end. But Nordi Mukiele went off first and early. He applauded the crowd first. But Mukiele was annoyed at the very end of the game. He was annoyed that the chances didn't come quick enough down the flank. And I think he's a great attacking power down that right flank. And he was visibly annoyed and was, shouting at Xhaka, one of the few people who dares to do that, I think, at the end of the game, for not playing the ball quick enough up to him. And he left the field first, considerably before the other players, in a bit of a strop. I don't think there's anything wrong, but I think he was just frustrated, I think. Huh?
You want that though, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
The fact that our players leave Liverpool away and leave this game, really disappointed they've not won against teams. I mean, Brighton have lost one home game this season. They've got a ridiculous home record over the last 8 years. And we've kept a clean sheet there. I mean, they've not kept... Sorry, they've... The first team to keep a clean sheet there since last season, I mean... Things like that. We didn't give them a sniff in the game. They didn't have
That's very true.
The last 2 games, we've played Newcastle and Brighton, and we've given them both nothing, really, in terms of clear-cut chances.
Although they were horrible at finishing yesterday. And lots of long-range shots, I accept, but...
But they only had, I think, that Ayari one where he fires it over the bar is the only chance I really thought, that could have been a goal there. But I think as well, if we flipped our defensive record so that, we were the 4th best attack in the league, but then also had our against column, which is one of the worst in the league. I mean, we would be right towards the bottom of the league. I mean, look at Leeds.
I think
They've
you're
scored
right.
24 goals. So Leeds have scored 5 more goals than us, but conceded 14 more.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But the flip side to that coin about Brighton is that they've also conceded the most amount of goals, and we have not really troubled them. So it's the same. It's the same initial problem. I think everything is great at the minute, and it's fine. But I think we would all accept that we need to be a little bit better in creativity, and maybe it is just a case of taking more chances. And I don't necessarily agree with you that Bris instructs them not to do that. It would seem that way, but he's quite happy repeatedly for Roos to take a long ball and play the second ball there. Quite happy for long throws to play the second ball. So why not on long shots? It doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to match. So I'm not convinced that that's an instruction, but it does appear that way. Why don't we take them?
Yeah. Right, let's move on to the wingers, because this is where we were going before I stopped us on our track. So what do you want me to press on screen?
Well, I just wanted to... look, I mean, the question that's pertinent at the minute after that first game is, what did we think about Adingra?
I thought he did well.
So he did well? I do too. Yeah. But at the game yesterday, I had to check myself because I found myself wanting to look for things that he did wrong. I found myself starting the game wanting to find things he did wrong to validate the fact that he doesn't play. But actually, he did pretty well. And I think he did much better than people might imagine. So if you bring up the passing, this is a comparison between Chris Rigg and Adingra. So in terms of passing, he makes more passes than Rigg. And if you again look at the vertical column of who Adingra is passing to, he's passing to Xhaka and Lefay in the midfield. He does that 4 times when he's got the ball. Obviously, he puts in some crosses. He, tries some dribbles here and there. He wins a couple of corners. I think he wins 2 or 3 corners. So they won't count here, but they are productive. But in terms of pure passing, he passes to midfielders 4 times, and Rigg passes to midfielders once. The majority of Rigg's passing is backwards. So I think if you were to compare him to Rigg, then in terms of passing, then he's had a better game as the winger. And I'm not sure that most people would say that. I think most people would have said, yes, Adingra had a good game, but not necessarily better than Rigg. Adingra actually has the most amount of carries into the opponent's box of any player for both sides on the pitch. He carries the ball into the opponent's box 5 times. And we're just talking about having a creativity problem where he does it more than any player on both teams. And I think if you compare him to Rigg Adingra has 5 carries into the opponent's box. Rigg has none. Adingra has 11 passes completed. Rigg has 10. He has 7 passes to midfielders. Rigg has 2. He actually wins 2 counter presses. If you bring up the, I think we have a, well, no, not that one. We'll leave that one for the second, but it'll come up. He wins 2 counter presses. Rigg wins 1. And actually, Adingra loses the ball several times in the game, but no time does he lose it in his own half. But Rigg loses it in his own half twice. So categorically, in terms of what you want from a winger, Adingra had a far better game than Chris Rigg. And I'm not sure that would be people's natural reaction. Now, that is not to say that Chris Rigg is poor or he shouldn't do that, but he had a vastly better game. More carries, more passes to midfielders, more counter presses, 0 losses of the ball in his own half. And in every category there, he's far better than his winger on the other side of the pitch. So I thought he had a really good game, actually. Despite me wanting him, bizarrely, wanting to find fault with him, he's done really well.
Watching the game, I thought that Adingra looked good. I thought Rigg, to be honest, struggled throughout the game. I don't think he had a great game. He looked... I don't want to be too scathing, and I won't be scathing because I like Chris Rigg, and I think that the more he plays, the better he's going to get. But he did look a little bit lightweight, and he was occasionally bullied off the ball. And I think he felt he had more time than what he really did on the ball. And I think he lost it. To me, anyway, it looked like he lost the ball a few times because he was a bit sort of slow with it. So I actually felt Adingra did really, really well. But to be honest, when I've seen Adingra this season, I've generally liked what I've seen because I think he has a bit more of an X factor than any other winger we have. I think he can do things that our other wingers can't. I think with our other wingers what they're kind of going to do, whereas Adingra is a bit more inconsistent, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean he's just inconsistent in what he does with the ball. I feel like he can cut inside and shoot. He can go down the line and try and take players on. I just think he's got more flexibility in this game. But I thought Adingra did really, really well. I mean, I want to see... I'd be so disappointed if he got brought out for the next game because I felt he'd played so well. He deserved the chance to start against Leeds.
Well, I mean, it's something for the preview, perhaps, but I think his performance yesterday, he deserves to play again. And there is the tempting question to say, well, let's put him on the right and put Mundell on the left, perhaps, because I'm not sure who else you put on the right. It's more of a question for preview, but I thought Mundell played well when he came on as well.
He did.
Yeah. Do you want to put up the XG chart? Because I know you're not a fan of this, but I think it does serve us well for like the momentum of the game. Now, this is from a website called XG Stats, but it's in complete disagreement to all the other ones that do XG for the game.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because we
know.
the XG as far as I do.
Yeah, we won. Well, I don't want to sound like Lee Johnson, but we won the XG. But this is very different to that. But I do feel like this. If you look at that chart, maybe this is a bit how the game flowed. I thought that we won the early part of the game. The big yellow arrow is where we make our substitutions. So that's like 64 minutes. That's when we make our substitutions. But I do feel that they did dominate that, sort of pretty much from just before then onwards, quite a bit. There's a big rise in our sort of momentum either side of half time. I thought we did very well there, but I thought we controlled more of the early game than this sort of lets on. But there was, if you think about it, there was a lot of control with almost no shooting. So yeah, it does differ. If you go to FootMob or SofaScore or anything like that, they have us like 1.38 and Brighton down at 1.1 or something like that. So, but I just thought this was interesting to see the, in terms of momentum and the substitutions. I do feel that second half is either side of half time in that second half is a fair reflection of how the control of the game went. They just happen to have more shots off, but all of those shots are flying high and wide and ridiculous and whatever. But it was just interesting.
What I'm finding most interesting with this is that Mundell chance we were talking about must have been rated at best at 0.05 xg.
Yeah, well, I think it's a better chance than that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, FootMob gives that as a big chance created.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just worth noting that in the argument about XG, how variable these measurements really are. From they've got Brighton on 1.6 and us on less than 1, and you go to any of the other sites and it's it's almost a reversal. So it all to be taken within context. But they certainly dominated the game, and certainly at half time, I thought either side of half time we had some really good chances. I felt disappointed because I felt like we were going to win, but upon reflection, they were a really good team. They also had their captain and centre half suspended, and I just thought this is a chance. But we picked up a point against a really good side, and maybe we're just getting carried away expecting too much. We're sixth, which is amazing.
Sixth on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
you can't really not that. You see, I actually think, for me, the first 60 minutes of the game, irrespective of this lovely chart down here, which would disagree with me, I thought up to that yellow arrow you put on, I thought we were by far and away the best team and by far and away the team that looked like scoring. I actually think a lot of our issues after this point came from Bromley going off because we lost that pressure reliever, and Isidore, as good as Isidore is, and I understand Isidore coming on because he's so much better on the break, and it does give us a bit more of a goal threat, you would think, because in theory he can get in behind. But
in order for him to go on,
we lost the ability though to get out because Robbie was doing such a good job for us, and their centre backs will have known this and will have went, oh, okay, right, that pain in the arses went off. Now we've just got to worry about his pace, but we don't have to worry about the physical threat that we did. And yeah, I think you could see that when when Bromley came off, for me, we lost quite a bit in the game.
In order for Wilson to work as a substitution, you have to do what we did yesterday, which is, I think, what frustrated most people is that I agree with you. Up until the hour, we looked by far the better side. We looked at the side who might score, who might win the game. And then, you get to these substitutions, and when Wilson comes on, in order for him to play successfully, you have to sit deeper and then attack the break with a ball over the top. And so, I mean, that means that they have to have the ball in the middle of the park. And to some extent, after the hour, when those substitutions came on, we did kind of relinquish possession. We did sit back. It was a case of, right, well, let's take the point. If we can, we've got 20 minutes, let's take the point. And we might get something on the break with Wilson. And that seems to be, what happened. That if you bring Wilson on, he can only work if you create the space by dropping deeper. And I think that was the source of the frustration, in that I think a lot of people felt as though we kind of went to that too early, when we could still be pressing them a bit. I don't know. But yeah, certainly you do lack something when Bromley comes off. You gain something as well, but the exchange is that you have to give up the middle of the park a bit more. But we're solid defensively. Can we talk about Dan Ballard? He's my man of the match.
We can always talk about Dan Ballard. Go on, talk about Dan Ballard. Give me your words of wisdom. Although there was reports last night that Dan Ballard was limping off the pitch at the end of the game. I'd seen that. But if that was true, none of the press people seemed to ask the manager about Dan Ballard and whether or not he was injured. So I don't know what to make of that.
Well, let me laud his praises. Okay. If you have a look at defensive actions there, he is top of our defensive actions by far. Now, I like to discount the final column here, the F column. I like to do only a combination of CBI. Well, TDA is total defensive actions. That's the total of all the other 3 columns. But I like the middle 2 columns, which is clearances, blocks, interceptions, and the T for tackles. So if you add them up, Ballard there, Alderetti's your man, of course, but Ballard has 8 total defensive clearances, blocks, interceptions, and tackles. So he's got 8, the same as Alderetti there, who was also magnificent. But if you also compare that with the Ballard recoveries chart, if you click on that one as well, you can see that Dan Ballard is by far top of the recoveries, 10 recoveries. And you can see his position in the pitch. I've got a yellow hanger around. He utterly dominates that right central defensive position. And you add his, he's equaling Alderetti for defensive contributions, but his recoveries, his counter-pressing recoveries are enormous. And I think he gives us just huge stability there. But to add weight to Geertruida's positive play yesterday, he's in the midfield seconding that. And I just think that's enormous. Now, Alderetti obviously has a good game, but 10 counter-pressing recoveries from a centre-half is absolutely huge for anybody. And I just think you add that to his defensive contributions and his aerial dominance. Again, he hit every header, which is not included in those statistics for the defensive actions, the aerial duels. He's just immense in every capacity you would want him to be. He vastly exceeds anything we could purchase at all, I think. And I think he was magnificent yesterday. And you just don't see that kind of chart for him across, for a centre-half across the board in every, aerial dominance and counter-pressing recoveries and in defensive actions. He's dominating all of them, which is amazing. I love Dan Ballard.
Yeah,
and I know you love Alderetti, but
well, I can love 2 centre backs. I don't have to pick one over the other. Yeah, I thought Ballard. He's just been
compare that to compare that chart to Brighton's centre recoveries. You look at the bottom of their pitch. They in their goal. Now, part of the reason they're not doing recoveries in their box is because we don't play into their box very often. So it's not as dominant, but it's not far in those midfield areas. And I think their midfield was combative with ours. Anyway, there you go.
There we go. Big Dan Ballard, deserving all of the praise. And as a Gasolfi said that you can sign any sort of players, but I can't sign another Dan Ballard. That just about sums it up.
I mean, I don't think you can. I mean, where do you find somebody who, dominates counter-pressing recoveries as a centre-half like that and is good at every other aspect of the game and qualifies for homegrown status?
The main thing that Ballard, I think, has added to his game isn't just that he's become a bit more of a monster. He's added, 10% to his physicality and all that, but it's the fact that he can actually run with the ball and he can pass with the ball. I think his biggest issue was possibly his distribution a couple of years ago, but now, touch wood, but I can't really remember him giving the ball away from passes ever, really. He's game. I've never seen a player develop. I've seen a thing and it was like before the Coventry semi-final, Dan Ballard just decided he was the best centre-back in the world. And it does very much feel like that is true. He has come on leaps and bounds since the middle of last season.
He doesn't give the ball away. He doesn't miss a pass. However, the one thing that is missing from his game is the ability to make long crossfield passes like Alderetti. I think when Alderetti was out, we missed that ability to pass from left to right from him. If Dan Ballard in the next year or two can add that to his game, then he will be a near perfect centre-half, I think, in the modern game.
It's not easy, though, to find someone that can do literally everything. But I think Ballard just continues pretty much every week. He doesn't necessarily always get man of the match just because it's what you expect from him.
No. Can we talk about left back?
Let's talk about left back.
Are we sticking with Hume? He had a decent game.
Do you know what?
But it bothers me that he's not left-footed.
Yeah, it bothers me. And he looks awkward. He didn't do anything wrong in the game. I thought he actually had a solid game. So,
although I think he has to play Bromley in on that pass instead of taking the shot on, but that's,
Yeah, but in terms of his defensive attributes, he did nothing wrong in the game. The only thing I would say is, I mean, I don't want to get too much Leeds preview heavy, but we are obviously talking about the left back situation. Leeds have got good wing backs, but actually they only play with wing backs. They don't have any other wingers. So it makes you wonder, are we better off playing somebody like Serkin, who's maybe a bit more of an attacking threat, because Leeds, in theory, should have less on the
Well,
wings?
if you talk about Trey Hume's shot, I think if it's Sirkin who takes that shot, it's a truer shot. You remember his goal? Was it against Cardiff, his goal, wasn't it? I can't remember. No, it wasn't Cardiff. That was his tap in.
Coventry is the one who screamed
Yes,
it in.
that's the one. He lashes it from 30 yards.
Yeah, we drew 2-2 somehow. We should have won that game.
Wow. Never mind them.
Can't be choosers.
Never mind them Bris season. I do want to have a look at the crosses chart, which I've got from FB Ref. If you have a look at that. Because if you look at what I've highlighted here, these are crosses, the crosses column. And most crosses there come from Maxim de Kuiper, Mitoma, and Karioglu. 5, 4, 4. These by far most crosses from those players. And they play down Brighton's left. So you've got the fullback and the left winger and then the substitute left winger. And that's where the biggest threat against us in terms of crosses came from. And that's actually down Sunderland's right back. So if we want to wonder about left back, maybe we don't need to so much, because actually the biggest threat in the game in terms of crossing came by far against Rigg and Mukiele. Now, I don't know. I mean, this adds weight to Hume is fine at left back. It also adds weight to, Adingra pulling his weight, perhaps defensively. And Adingra gave away some fouls and put some tackles in on that wing. He didn't shirk yesterday. And it also gives, some weight to the argument about saying, well, actually, do we need a bit more strength on the right wing? Because I think it's a surprise to think that most of their crossing, by far, came down the right wing and not the left wing. Because I know there is a narrative that I have indulged in as well, that because Hume is right-footed, it's easy to cross around him. Well, not true yesterday.
See, my issue, I don't think it necessarily is that. I mean, I think I look at this here, and I think the reason why they're getting so many crosses off the left side is, when Mitoma came on, I actually think, if you watch the game, Mukiele had him on toast, and generally his crosses into the box were crosses where he was off balance and he was trying to force it in. And I think Brighton did that a lot in the game. I actually think, though, that Hume defensively, I think sometimes it may benefit him to be defensively with his right foot there, because most of the players he's coming up against are also right-footed. As the nature of football is, everyone is on
inverted
the right wing.
wingers,
Yeah, so does that help him in a sense? My issue is in possession. When, for example, Joe were playing out from the back, and the ball comes over to Trey Hume, he is controlling it with that outside of his right foot, and it looks weird. It's not natural, and I don't think it helps him, control the ball and pick his next pass. I think, and it also probably doesn't help in terms of feeding the ball up the line, because he's having to play a ball sort of that way rather than up the line as a traditional pass. Yeah, that's my issue with it.
Yeah, fair enough. I just thought that was interesting. I'm not sure, and I think what this doesn't show, you're quite right, is the quality and caliber of those crosses, which are very different. But it does show you where threat comes from, perhaps.
I would agree. I think it is useful looking at, but I do think Mukiele, there was a point, I don't know if you would have seen this yesterday, but there was a point where he was going one-on-one with Mitoma when he came on, and Mitoma cut back 3 times, and Mukiele ended up winning the ball, and he walked away he was absolutely laughing, he was pissing himself laughing, because he was
he's proving to be he's proving to be a tremendous player. There are very few players that get round him, past him, but it's his work rate. I mean, he does the long throws, he gets upfield and puts in crosses fantastically well. If we had a top draw, creative, up and down the park right winger in front of him, we would be immense down the right-hand side.
Yeah.
But I mean, the club surely know that. They surely look at him and think, wow, he's great. If we could have someone that great in front of him, we'd be dangerous. That's got to be a target.
Yeah, I would agree. I can see a pass network on here, which we often like looking at. So let's pop that on here and see what have you noticed from this? Because I think our pass network looks a bit more natural than their pass network.
Yeah, I thought that trying to reflect upon the disappointment of not winning the game, and you remember that actually where we are, where we've come from, and even that complaint about not getting enough shots off. For all of that, you think about it, we did control most of the game, apart from that sort of half hour, that last half hour. We did control much of the game, and for the first half, we were easily the better side, and probably slightly end to end after half time. But yeah, I think we had the cleaner chances to score, and I think this shows pretty even distribution. Just to remind people, the larger the circle, the more frequently they have the ball, and the smaller the circle, the less frequently. So if you look at ours, the ball is pretty evenly spread around possession of our team. So I think that shows pretty good control, and the pass network is that nice sort of interlaced V. And I think it demonstrates what we saw in the game, that we did have a good amount of control in the game. And I like the fact that Lefay, you can see there, and we saw this yesterday, often tried to play as a second striker up alongside Bromley, particularly in pressing from the front and defending. He was doing a lot of that and worked very hard. I'm always amazed that he doesn't get substituted at times because he works so hard all over the place. And if you compare that to Brighton, I think they have far less control. They see far less of the ball spread around their players. You can see the centre halves and who was there number 8 in Brighton? Oh, Geertruida in midfield. Yeah. So yeah, they see most of the ball, and the lines are thicker between those players. So they did less with it. And if you think about their chances in the game, a lot of their chances were players sort of trying to cut back through the middle and take shots from distance. There are a lot of them like that. And that's really where they are. We're much wider than they are. They're much more central, and they have less control of the game than we do. So I think it's just another positive, that comparison, to say that actually, do you know what, we stop being disappointed tough. We were pretty controlling in that game. That's a good place to be. Just trying to remind myself.
It's interesting, actually, because I read the BBC match report last night, and they'd said that Sunderland were visibly tired towards the end of the game, and they attributed maybe, I don't want to say it was an onslaught, but maybe Brighton being a bit more dominant towards the end of the game to Sunderland's tiredness, which I thought was interesting because I didn't see it that way. I don't think we looked particularly tired. I thought that we made a purposeful decision to try and control the game without the ball, which we pretty much did. I mean, if we look at this XG chart here, I mean, there's a few things in here, but these 0.11s are not big chances. All these chances at the end are like little chances. So that to me suggests that we did what we did against Coventry in the playoffs, or Sheffield United, control the game without having the ball, let them have the ball, and let them put crosses in, and let them shoot from places we're happy for them to shoot. So, yeah, I don't know if that was just bad journalism or somebody who just hasn't watched much of something, but I thought it was interesting in whether or not did we look tired?
Yeah, no, I didn't think so. No, usually those sort of reports are not necessarily, they're just from people who don't know how we play. I think it seemed to us, well, certainly at the ground, which we were talking about, it just seemed like we had thought, okay, 70 minutes, 65, 70 minutes, let's try to control this, let's try to take the point. And part of having Wilson on means that you have to bring the opposition into that midfield to play the ball over the top of them. And we played a lot more balls like that when he was on, because that plays to his strength. They weren't particularly good balls, and Wilson had to do a lot of pointless running. But no, I think that was a deliberate choice, as you say. Let's take the point. It also works in terms of trying to steal a win with Wilson on the pitch. So I think that was all purposely decisions. I don't think we looked tired. No. I mean, it's not like Adingra or Rigg or Mundell, or even lately Wilson have all played lots and lots of football. They haven't. So I don't think that's a really relevant comment.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. Is there anything else we need to touch on? Are there any other points we want to talk about?
No, I mean, there were not enough Santa hats in the away end yesterday. Is my only complaint. No, the last game before Christmas I'm used to everyone having a Santa hat on, and they didn't.
Yeah, maybe in general is the world less Christmassy? I don't know.
Maybe.
Are we less Christmassy
I don't know.
As a people? I've also remembered I didn't ask you a question of the week.
Oh,
So let's throw in a question of the week, which I haven't thought of one. So I'm just going to throw you one that I've just thought of off the top of my head. And the question of the week will be, what is your favourite Sunderland away game that's niche? You know,
my
like
favourite fun in the
as
away
far
game when?
that was niche. So I'm not talking about, oh, I saw Sunderland win away at, Newcastle, or I saw Sunderland, win at Man United
Oh, I
in the League Cup.
see.
I mean, like, sort of a one that means something to you for some reason, or is like just
Oh.
an
Well,
interesting moment, or just a good day, or something
there's
like
a
that.
couple. I know my worst one. My worst one is when Chris Makin scored against Spurs. It was like the first time we'd scored
Oh
against
yeah,
Spurs away for you.
final day of the
That's my
season.
worst one because it's the only ground I've ever been laid out at. I stepped
Late.
out of a taxi and some guy, I went, hooray! And some guy smashed me in the side of the face. And next thing I know, I'm looking at the taxi wheels. That's my hated one.
Oh wow.
But my favourite one was when we won the promotion to the league away at Bury. I think we won like 5-1 or something or other, was it? But we were
You
all
talk
over the
about
place in that ground years ago in the Reed.
you talk about Luton. Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant the Roy Keane, which was Luton.
No,
Okay. I know what you mean. You're talking about the one that was on pay per view, wasn't it? In like 2000, in 99.
I can't remember. I was at the game though. And but what I
Yeah.
remember most about the game and the funnest thing was after about half an hour, some fella, because it was an old stadium, some fella climbed one of the floodlights or some scoreboard pylon. And he's in this pylon, this stand thing was in the middle of the away end. So he climbed it and he's up there and he takes his shirt off and he's waving his Sunderland shirt. And then a couple of policemen and stewards came around at the bottom of the pylon to take him away and arrest him when he came down. So having seen this, he just decided to stay there for the entire hour, waving his shirt around. Of course, we all loved it. And that's the one, I don't even remember the goals in that game. I was just stood next to this pylon cheering this fella on up there. And I thought, I just remember that. I don't know why. It's one of my, happy feeling, sort of. He fought the law and for about 70 minutes he won. And I liked that.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I mean, I was, just for context, I would have been 4 at the time. So there you are. Makes you feel a bit older. Or more older than what you really are. I think my most favourite niche one is we played Wigan away and Asamoah Gyan scored and we were down to 10 men. Catamol got sent off, as per. And I just remember that day when Asamoah Gyan scored, thinking that we were going to be a good team that year. I mean, it didn't really pan out that way. Although we did finish 10th. I think that's the year we finished 10th. But I just remember, when sometimes you have moments where you leave a game, and I kind of had this when we beat Wolves at home this season, where we weren't great, but we ended up winning the game, and I was like, do you know what? We're going to have an alright season here. And that was how I felt that day against Wigan. Henderson got an unbelievable assist. Jan, our new World Cup star, who we bought for 13 million, scores the goal. And I was just left the ground thinking, do you know what? We played 10 men for like 80 minutes there. We played well. We got a draw. We're going to be a good team this year.
I remember feeling exactly the same about Jan. I was staggered that we'd bought a semi-finalist of the World Cup or something, wasn't he? Or a quarter-finalist.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I can't believe it's one of the star strikers of the tournament is coming to play for us. This is amazing. Never had this before.
Yeah.
And as you say,
it was quarter-final.
Yeah. Didn't quite turn out that way. Yeah. Missed a penalty in that game as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he missed the penalty from the handball.
Yeah.
So, there we go. Anyway, that's all we have time for. So let us know your favourite or most niche away day experience. I don't want to see a lot of, I was at Newcastle when we won 3-0. That's not what the point of this is. The point of this is a silly story like Taps or a more, not a silly story, because mine wasn't a silly story. Mine was more like a positive reflection on a game that didn't really mean anything in the context of a season. We'll be back with propaganda. We're going to do an end of year propaganda as well, where we're going to look through sort of the 2025 propaganda, which means we can tick off things we didn't do from last season. So plenty of Coventry content, I would imagine. Maybe a bit of Frank Lampard being bitter. Transfer window stuff. People saying that we've signed, an old man in Granit Xhaka. I presume we'll see some of that. And yeah, we'll pick out some of the
fun.
Yeah, the best bits of propaganda. So I think we'll probably do that maybe for this week's propaganda, because there isn't a ton from Brighton, as you would expect from a 0-0 draw. There is not.
The only conversation I had with a Brighton fan leaving the ground is, aren't we nice fans? We have a communal drinking area after the game. No one else has that. They're just obsessed with people liking them. And that was the only conversation I had. I'm like, I couldn't give a shiny. I couldn't give a shiny.
Yeah.
Off you go.
We're trying to take Fulham's award of being the most communal club
Yeah.
in the country. But they joined the way end. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Please subscribe to mine and Taft's channel, and we'll see you later in the week for propaganda and our Leeds preview, which will be out before Christmas, because can't imagine we're going to sit here on Christmas Day and record a preview. I don't think that's likely with your kids.
But you can all watch it on Christmas Day.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's true. Maybe we should have a Christmas Day video go out. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, we'll see you soon.